everybody, this is Rexluna with allthat'sepic.com's cosplay section, and today we're going to talk about planning your first cosplay. Kind of going to be ad-libbing this, so I hope that everything makes sense. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me either on the comment section, on Twitter, on Facebook, wherever you can find me. I'm all over the place. Anyway, so you're thinking about starting your first costume and you don't know where the heck to start. Well, here's my suggestion. Reference pictures. This is where you start. Find as many reference photos as you can for this character. Now, if you can, and this particular character is either an anime character or is from a game on PC, get as many screen caps as possible. I was lucky in a couple of cases, for example Morgan from Dragon Age Origins and Hawk from Dragon Age 2, that some of the people who were also working on the costume happened to have it on PC when I didn't, and they just went nuts and took tons of screen caps for me, so that was fantastic. In other cases, not quite so lucky, and it can get a little tough. But do the best that you can. I mean, people aren't going to go nuts if you get a couple things wrong because you can't find the photos for it. Now, once you get these photos, there's a couple things you can do. What I like to do is, in my computer, I actually sort all of my photos by different folders for each category. So I have ones for certain animes like Soul Eater, I have ones for Lord of the Rings, I have ones for Dragon Age, and within Dragon Age I have ones for the different games, and within the games I have ones for different characters. It's a little psychotic. What I like to do from there, of course I upload a lot of these pictures to my cosplay fan page, so that way if I ever forget about some of the things I was thinking of, because I have like a billion ideas of what I want to do, I can always just look there and find it. But I also print a lot of these out just the moment I think, hey, that'd be cool to do. And I put them in a little binder with no exciting cover, I'm sorry. And I put them in those clear plastic sheet thingies. Let's get a little closer. And I know it kind of wastes paper, but I recycle it whenever I get rid of it. So, like in the case of Hawk from Dragon Age 2, it requires a lot of different angles, so I printed out as much as I felt was necessary whenever I needed to have it out. And then all the extra ones are still on my computer, of course. Even the props. Props are always important. And then I can take this binder with me to the stores if I'm looking for fabric or if I'm looking for shoes or whatever. But yeah, you get the idea. I hope it's not too shiny. Obviously, we have a little bit more technology now than we did a few years ago when I started doing this. Granted, this wasn't my idea. I don't want to be like, I'm such a genius. No. Actually, the girl who introduced me to cosplay, who goes by Naxel these days, she showed me this. I don't know if that was her idea, but I'm going to say it was her idea. Anyhow, so we can put these things on our iPhones and our Androids and all that kind of stuff these days, so I don't have all my pictures on my tablet, so sometimes I don't want to do that, and I just bring the old binder with me. So, yeah. Now, the other thing I like to do is kind of a step 2 from that, is if I have a really complicated design, and going back to Hawk, because Hawk is a very complicated design, it's just staring at the photos sometimes isn't enough to quite figure out what I'm going to do. So, even though I'm not a very good artist, I actually drew out some of the pieces to try and figure out what they looked like. What was I going to make everything out of? What were the layers going to be? So, I don't know how well this is going to show because it's just pencil and this is kind of crappy lighting, but I drew a lot of these little bits out of the armor, and see, obviously I can't draw. That hand is backwards, I think. I'm sorry. Also, I was trying to figure out how am I going to layer the cloth and the leather armor and the metal armor and, you know, be comfortable, and how am I going to take it off and on and all that kind of stuff. So I drew that out too. Kind of not completely, but it was a start. So that's another idea if you have something really complicated. If it's not just a dress or pants and a top, it's another thought. And this definitely really helped out when I was starting to do the construction. Granted, I never finished it, but I will someday. I'm working on it. That's gonna be in the armor video. I'm gonna be working on this armor. So that's definitely something to think about. Now, there's a new thing I started this year that I haven't really had the chance to fully try out because I kind of took this year off for the most part of making costumes, but it looks promising and I really did like the idea. It's like a cosplay scrapbook, I don't know what you want to call it, but I take just like one reference photo, maybe two, and I write little notes next to everything, because with the other stuff it's just the reference photos, and I can add little pieces of fabric. So I can go to the fabric store and I can get swatches, and I can add these swatches and decide which ones I want to get later. Now in this case, my options were slim, so these were the fabrics that I bought. I didn't have choices. But in the case of a different costume where I had multiple choices, I could put all the swatches together and decide which ones I wanted. So I have a bunch of different entries in here that I never really got the chance to do anything about. Look at all these cool ideas that I had. Look at these cool costumes I was gonna do that never came to fruition this year. Anyway, but this I think is going to be a really cool idea, and I think it will help a lot, but I'll find out someday. Anyway, so that's just something to think about doing with your reference photos. Now, what I also like to do, which is part of why I like to have them in the binder, is when I'm actually working on them, like doing the sewing and cutting out and working on the patterns, is I take these photos and I tape them to my mirror, because I have one of those houses that was built in the early 80s, so I have those giant like ceiling to floor mirrors on the rollers. So I just put tape on the back and tape it to the mirrors, and that way I just have them hanging on the wall essentially, and it's not in the way. I don't have it on the table, I don't have to constantly move it, I don't spill anything on it, and then if I decide to work on another costume or I finish or whatever, I can just untape the back and stick it right back in the folder. So it's nice and easy. That's a thought. Obviously not everyone has the slidey mirrors, but you can always tape them to the wall or pin them to the wall, or not do that if it doesn't work for you. It's just an idea. Another thing that you might want to do, you might not want to do as well, is track your expenses when you're working on your costume, when you actually start buying the fabric and buying the wigs and buying the shoes and the contacts and all that stuff. I didn't do that for a while, partially because I didn't want to know how much I was spending, because it's a little scary, because costumes can get anywhere if you're lucky and doing something more of a closet cosplay, something like, say, Ellie from Last of Us, where you can go to a thrift store and buy some jeans and buy a t-shirt and do the painting and then weather it, you know, and get some of the props. You can get that for maybe under $100, maybe $150. That's like a godsend to have a costume that cheap. Or something like Morgan, I actually have my little book right here with all my receipts. I'm already at like $350-ish on that, and I'm not done yet. I haven't bought shoes yet, I haven't bought a wig, I haven't bought contacts. It's scary. It gets expensive. I'm also not done with the staff, so yeah, it's scary. So it is something to think about, just because if you start kind of tipping over the line of how much you want to spend on a costume, and you might want to budget, then you know where you need to start cutting corners. So now if you're new to sewing, or you don't know how to sew at all, there's this thing called closet cosplay, which is the concept of taking pre-owned items, altering them, or mixing them with store-bought items to create a costume. So there's certain characters, specifically, there's a ton of anime characters that it works for, because a lot of them are meant to look normal, so they have more casual outfits. So say, like characters from Elfen Lied are pretty good for this, or Misa. A lot of her stuff you can find similar items at like Hot Topic. But you can mix that with certain items you own, so maybe you have the right skirt or the right boots, and you find a similar shirt. maybe you cut the sleeves off, or you shorten the sleeves, or you add a bow or something like that. So it requires a minimal amount of sewing, but you still have to go out and do the research and the legwork. So you still get the satisfaction of working on the costume yourself, but you don't have to do as much of the sewing that you would have to do if you're starting from scratch. And it's a good way to practice while you're learning. So that's definitely something to think about. It's also a good way to kind of ease your way in to cosplaying, which is how I started, because if you start with a big project, you might get a little overwhelmed. So definitely something to think about. Now for me, one of my favorite parts of cosplay planning and shopping is the wig. There's just something about putting on a new wig, or really just a wig in general, that just brings a character to life and just makes it all feel real. It's a fantastic feeling, and if you've never done it, you're gonna love it, trust me. Anyway, so I've gotten mostly all of my wigs from eBay. There's a few that I've purchased from other people, and a lot of them have gotten their wigs from eBay. And obviously they can get a little sketchy. So there's a couple rules that I kind of keep in mind when it comes to shopping on eBay. And first of all, when you're looking for a wig, I just usually put in a few keywords, obviously, and try to find something as close as I can. And first of all, you want to check their seller rating. And if it's someone I've never heard of before, I check their reviews and see what the positives sound like, if they sound kind of fake, or if they're all, they got here on time, they got here on time, the shipping was fast, yeah, it got here quick. Then that's not really what I want to hear. I want to know that the quality was good. If a lot of the negatives were that there was bad quality, then obviously, you know, that's not really good. Another thing you can do is you can Google search the eBay seller's name, because a lot of cosplayers will actually have forums on either cosplay.com or various other forums, maybe anime forums, about certain sellers, and will do reviews for them. There's, in fact, I think actually on cosplay.com there are multiple forums about different sellers, either through cosplay.com or through eBay or through probably even Taobao, and saying which ones are good, which ones are bad, certain things they've bought, even doing specific reviews on certain items. So that's a really good resource for certain, for sellers and stuff. Arda Wigs is another good website. They have a bit of a limited stock, and they're based in the US, which is good, so their shipping is shorter. Their wigs are a little bit more expensive, but their quality is better. They're thicker. They also sell lace front wigs. They sell ponytail wigs that you can actually pull up into a ponytail instead of always having the clip-on, so that's pretty cool. They do tend to run out of stock because of the popularity of the wigs, so that can get a little frustrating if you're expecting a certain kind and you have to wait a while to get them back, but I mean, they're really good quality, so I mean, what more can you ask for? Now, before we go, one of the most important things you need to know is that you are never ever alone. There are tons and tons of resources out there. There are obviously tutorial videos out there, and I'm definitely not the only one. There's tons on YouTube. There's a bunch on DeviantArt. People have written out tutorials for so many things. And if you go on cosplay.com, there's tutorials that people have written out there. There's people that have made tutorials with pictures in their albums. And before we go, the most important thing you need to know is that you are not alone. There are tons of people out there that are just starting like you, and there's tons of people who have been doing this for years and years and years. And then there's people in the middle like me. And we all want to help you. So there's people who have video tutorials like me. There's people who write them out and put them on DeviantArt. There's people who have them on cosplay.com on the forums. And if you can't find what you're looking for, just post. Just ask a question. There's someone who will answer it for you. And if they don't know how to answer it, they'll probably know where to point you in the right direction. So don't ever feel like you're drowning, because there's always someone who's willing to help. So feel free to ask me any questions. If I confused you, if you're working on something and you don't know what to do, or whatever, if you just have a question about anything. If I can't answer it, I'll point you to someone who can, or point you to where I think you might be able to find the answer. So I hope that this was helpful, and for those of you just starting your costumes, good luck. And go to allthat'sepic.com's cosplay section to find more awesome cosplay stuff, and see you next time!